cracker time of the year it is to go out and catch surface fish, the whiting and bream in the estuaries. Coming into the end of spring and summer, the weather warms up, water warms up, and fish get more active on surface. The Bassday SugaPens are perfect for that scenario. Come with me and I'll show you how to use them. So we've pulled up to an edge here that's got a channel down that the boat's sitting in currently, and beside it we've got a big weed flat. But what makes this weed flat attractive for me to fish is there's lots of broken country with sand flats. So what that means is the fish can come in out of the weed to get protection, but they can go over the sand and feed and grab the yabbies and the other stuff they like to eat. Good fish to swim away then, that'd be nice to hit the lure. So what I'm trying to do is work along the edge of the bank with the electric, or drifting, however you want to do it. Cast as far as you can over these flats, especially these shallow flats, and then just working the SugaPen back with the just little twitch style. So with this broken bank, what we're trying to produce is that splashing little prawn, jelly prawn action coming across the surface, and as it hits that sandy areas, I'll work it for probably a metre over the sand. If nothing hits it, I'll give it a little bit of a pause. What the pause does is lets fish have a chance to come up to and have a look at it, especially bream. So whiting like your action to keep going and not too much pauses, but bream really like that pause. Sometimes it makes all the difference to just get that little pause before you start moving it again. One of the good things about the Bassday SugaPen is when you perform that pause, it likes to sit tail down, which means it's more visual for the fish to look at and increase your hookup rate. When you get a lure that sits flat on the surface, it's harder for the bream to come up to grab that lure off the surface, and it spooks them a little bit going that close because you got predators on the surface like birds that the bream don't like going too close to. By that tail down action, it just increases your chance of those fish hookups and makes it a better lure. Little Brembo. Little Brembo. Just distracted, yeah. So it was just a quick pause there. Saw a few fish around and then started working as soon as I seen the fish. Only producing a little bream, but the technique is killer. Good size for a fish tank, these guys. One thing to note when we're talking about these little fish is a lot of people are scared to use larger lures. Like this is the 70mm SugaPen, and people use the 120mm for the same purpose. Don't be scared. You saw that tiny bream. It was only just bigger than the lure. They don't, especially for surface lures, bream aren't afraid to attack larger lures. So you can mix it up, try a bigger searching bait, or try a little, depending on the area you're fishing. The SugaPen has a weight right at the bottom of it, which helps it sit vertical in the water, but the other benefit is the casting distance. So you can get a long way out, a cast straight through the air. So for such a small lure, it's got a really good casting distance, increasing those hookup rates on the flats. Remember, across these flats, the further you cast, the more chance you got of catching fish. Because the closer you go, it means the fish spook away from the boat. So by getting that further away, that extra couple metres, nice little scare, that extra couple metres makes a big difference when you're casting along a bank, because that's an extra 2 metres of fish chance where they can hook up. Yep. Yep. You got one. Yoo-hoo. Keep him up off the weed. So when you want in these weed flats, Doesn't matter the size, they like to dart in, and when that lure gets in the weed, you've got a higher chance of reddening. So keep the rod tip high, bring it in, once again, another little one. But hey, surface fishing is so fun and visual. We'll just get this guy off. Come on. So surface fishing is so fun and visual. Doesn't matter what the size is. It's extremely fun to go out and use the SugaPen. Sometimes on the flats it gets quite shallow, like where we are now. They've got to lift that electric up. And it's really important you do this because if you stir up all that sand and the mud on the bottom, it tends to spook the fish away. So by keeping that electric on the top of the water rather than spooking and stirring up all the mud and the sand on the bottom, it actually gives you a better hookup rate than just ploughing through that dirty water. So when you're fishing open sand flats, there's lots and lots of area to cover. So it helps to know the territory or think like a fish. Generally, fish don't like coming up on the very top flat part where there's no holes for the yabbies, there's no channels. They like around the edges or where areas just that live can only be an inch deeper for those yabbies to live. Walk a flat at low tide, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But when on the water here, there's gutters that follow through, and off the edge here, there's a little bit of a deeper hole, and the fish will hang around that hole low tide, come up on the flats to feed. So they're going to be hanging around that area. So the best thing you can do is cast over those channels. You might even pick up flathead on the surface. They're quite fun. Bream and whiting. So by fishing the structure, you'll have a more successful day on the water. A lot of people have been asking me what size lure I use for what purpose. There isn't a straight answer for that because I can use the 120 for whiting or a 58 for whiting or bream, it doesn't really matter. But on a general rule, you try to match the hatch that's there. So if you have little bait, you can use little surface lures, big bait, use big surface lures, and the size of the fish too. Obviously a massive flathead will eat all sizes of baits, but a small flathead is only going to eat a small lure. The other thing to consider is the size of the lure and where you're fishing. Sometimes you want to really, like a searching bait I call it, that you can attract fish from a long way away. Obviously a bigger lure is going to do that better than a small lure. So when you're fishing big open flats, I typically start with a large lure, and if I find structure where I know there's rock bars or where the fish are hanging, you can go to a small lure to increase your hookup rates. Over rock walls, you know fish are going to be there, so I typically use a small lure over those sort of rock walls. So don't get stuck in thinking that a 70mm lure like this is the only lure to use. You can go to 58s for jetties or where there's rock bars. You can go to 120 for flats. They're still going to catch you those prize whiting and bream you've been chasing. But you notice I haven't changed my hooks. A lot of people use the assist hooks, which is fine. I tend to find them a really good addition for when the fish are really finicky and not biting as well. But these size hooks are excellent for normal usage. You don't have to change them. You can catch bream and whiting like we've been doing today without standard hooks. When it shuts down, the assist hooks work and they tend to suck it in a bit easier, especially those small assist hooks. The Atomic Trick Bit Assist size 10 is what I use on these lures. So the other thing I might do is in tournaments, it's worth a lot of money to keep those fish and get them into the boat. Some of the tournaments might be up to 10 grand first prize. So you want to really make sure those hookups count and the fish stays on once you hook up. So what I do typically is I change these standard hooks to a Gamakatsu treble wide gap. So what it is the hook point is actually more turned in towards the eye. What that does is roll around the fish a bit better, increases your hookup rate and keeps those fish on the hook. So I do that when I'm fishing tournaments, but rarely will I do that when I'm fishing socially. But it is a good addition. If you just lose those couple of fish and doesn't stay on, try the Gamakatsu treble wide gaps on these SugaPens and you'll have better success. So I talked about the treble wide gap and the hook point slightly turned in towards the eye. And the shape of the treble, you can see there's not a traditional round bend. It comes more to a steep point here and a straight point, which increases that hook up and keeps that fish on. But you can also compare that wide difference. They're similar size hook, but you see how much finer this is. That hook point is way stickier. So it's going to penetrate that fish quicker and easier and resulting in more fish all the way to the boat. If you want to catch a nice feed of these fish over summer, check out the Bassday SugaPen range now.